A new study by researchers at Oxford University is the first to really show the difference a high meat diet has on the environment compared to a low meat diet. For more, I'm joined by Professor David Jenkins, Department of Nutritional Sciences and Medicine at the University of Toronto. Professor Jenkins, thanks for your time today.
You're welcome.
So to just give our viewers a little bit of a background on this, that study shows that someone who eats a lot of meat, which is considered to be more than 100 grams a day, produces an average of 10.24 kilograms of planet-warming greenhouse gases each day. You've seen the study. What were your initial thoughts on seeing these numbers?
I thought the numbers were good. I think that they were going in the sort of direction that all of us have been going in for a long while, and everyone's been saying this is a major problem. But they actually put some numbers to it and did it in a large survey study, which I think was very, very useful because it showed what the population were actually doing and on a sort of person-to-person basis, the damage they were doing.
Right, and this study, when you talk about that population, Professor, it was done in the UK, but do you think roughly the same numbers could be reflected here in Canada?
I think absolutely. It's the sort of data that we've all been talking about. We've all been worrying about this because the way that we eat is part of the way we damage the planet. And unfortunately, we have to rein ourselves in and think more about the planet. Not just the greenhouse gas emissions, which is what they showed, but also water use, which they also looked at, but also species loss. So I think these are all tremendous calamities which are happening in front of us as we eat our way to pleasure.
And when you talk about reining ourselves in, this doesn't mean, I'm just going to stick to meat here as an example, this doesn't mean we don't have to eat any meat. There's something to be said about eating something in moderation.
Well, I think that's what people say. I have a horrible feeling that we're going to have to get used to making some very big changes in the way that we transport ourselves, where we take our holidays. The whole thing is basically based on, can we not do a little bit more? Can we not have a little bit more? And I think that's the worry with this current climate change, which I think we've been talking about, and I don't think anyone on the planet is not aware that there are some big changes that will take a long time to reverse, and that's the problem. So I do think we're up for a harder time if we're going to reverse things.
Now, when we're looking at this study, Professor, some within the meat industry were saying that this analysis overstated the impacts of eating meat. They say the study only calculates the emissions that livestock produce. It doesn't take into account, how much carbon is absorbed into grasslands and trees, etc. Do you think that's a valid point to be made?
Well, it's a valid point to be made from their perspective, but I'd also say when you're talking about the beef industry, you're talking about an industry, not just cattle, but you're talking about slaughterhouses, you're talking about refrigeration, you're talking about the link with the dairy industry, because that's the same animals, basically. And you're talking about a large industry which consumes quite a lot of fossil fuel.
And so you talk about how maybe we need to...
I would say,
oh yeah, continue.
That they may not be taking into account the full amount. In other words, they're taking into account beef consumption and greenhouse gas associated with it and water use, but they're not perhaps taking into account the whole of the industry. So although the industry may cry, this is too much, the industry is not talking about itself in its entirety. I mean, when did you last go to the farm and pick up your milk from a farmer who milked his cows?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Professor David Jenkins, I do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. Thank you.